When you look at the world today, you see a game of power that has been played for decades. America has held the steering wheel of global control, dictating markets, influencing politics, and setting the rules everyone else must follow. But history tells us something important. No empire stays at the top forever. There is always a moment when the world shifts, when the giant starts to slow down, and a new force begins to rise. India is no longer the country that quietly followed the rules. It has the population, the technology, the talent, and most importantly, the confidence to write its own playbook. The old idea that you must rely on America to succeed is fading. The young generation in India doesn't just want jobs. They want to build companies. They don't just want to consume products. They want to create them. And when a country of over 1 billion people starts thinking this way, you are looking at a wave no one can stop. America's global control depends on one thing: the world's dependence. The moment India decides it will no longer be dependent, the entire balance of power begins to shift. America's position as a global superpower is not simply based on its military strength or its technological innovation. Those are important factors, but they are not the foundation that holds its empire together. The real foundation is something far more subtle yet infinitely more powerful: the world's dependence. Every nation that trades in dollars, every economy that relies on American markets, every country that looks to Washington for approval, is feeding into the same system that keeps America at the top. This is not just about economics, it is about influence. It is about the ability to set the rules of the game and to make others follow them, even if they don't agree. Dependence works like an invisible chain. You might not see it, but it controls how countries behave. When a country relies on American exports, American technology, American capital, or even American political support, it gives away a piece of its freedom to choose. America has mastered the art of making others believe that they cannot survive without it. And for decades, this belief has worked. It has allowed America to dictate trade agreements, to impose sanctions that cripple economies, and to shape international policies in its favor. Even countries with their own resources have often found themselves bowing to this influence because the cost of resistance seemed too high. But dependence is not permanent. It is a mindset and a structure, and both can be changed. The moment a nation decides to break that cycle, the chain begins to weaken. The moment a country builds its own industries, creates its own markets, and forms its own alliances, the grip of dependence loosens. And once the chain is broken, the old system starts to collapse from within. America's economic dominance is like a tower built on the foundation of global reliance. Remove the foundation, and the tower can no longer stand tall. India holds the potential to be one of the biggest forces capable of removing that foundation. It is not about directly confronting America with military power or aggressive diplomacy. It is about taking away the one thing America cannot afford to lose: the unquestioned reliance of the world. If India develops its manufacturing at scale, if it becomes a hub for innovation and technology that rivals Silicon Valley, if it becomes a leader in clean energy, pharmaceuticals, and digital infrastructure, then it will no longer need to import solutions from the United States. More importantly, other countries will begin to look at India as an alternative. That is the beginning of the shift. America's power thrives on the idea that it is the central hub of trade and investment. The dollar remains the world's reserve currency because most countries still trade in it. Global corporations base their strategies around American consumers because it is seen as the largest, most lucrative market. International institutions often take cues from Washington before making major policy decisions. But what happens when a new hub emerges? What happens when global corporations see India's billion-strong population, rising middle class, and booming digital economy as equally valuable? What happens when trade deals can be made in Indian rupees or through multilateral currency systems that bypass the dollar entirely? That is when the very pillars of America's economic control begin to crack. The truth is, America cannot dominate a world that no longer depends on it. If countries can get their technology, their investment, and their markets from somewhere else, then America's leverage evaporates. And this is where India's rise matters. India has the demographic advantage, a young, ambitious workforce ready to take on the world. It has a growing technological base, from software exports to research to space exploration. It has agricultural and industrial capacity that, with the right policies, could outproduce many of its competitors. Most importantly, it has the political will to pursue strategic partnerships beyond the traditional Western framework. The path to breaking America's dominance is not to challenge it in areas where it is strongest, but to build strength in areas where dependence exists. If America controls the flow of advanced technology, India must create its own. If America dominates global entertainment and media, India must grow its own influence in culture and storytelling. If America leads in finance, India must innovate in fintech and alternative banking systems. Every time India replaces an American dependency with a homegrown or alternative solution, the balance shifts a little more. History shows us that no empire survives when the world finds other options. The British Empire was not defeated solely through military battles. It collapsed when countries stopped needing it for trade and governance. America's global control follows the same principle. It is not about who has the loudest voice or the strongest army. It is about who the world turns to when it needs solutions. If India positions itself as that problem solver for the developing world, for emerging economies, and even for parts of the developed world, then the shift will not just be economic, it will be psychological. Once the belief in America's necessity is gone, the dominance fades naturally. Dependence is power, but only as long as it exists. The moment the dependence is gone, so is the power. A confident, self-reliant India has the ability to change the way global trade and influence operate. Self-reliance is not simply about producing everything domestically. It is about building the capacity to stand on your own terms, to negotiate without fear, and to compete in markets where others have long dominated. For decades, India's role in the global economy has been shaped by its position as a service provider, a back-end office for the world, and a consumer of imported goods and technologies. But the world is seeing a different India emerge, one that is developing its own products, creating its own technologies, and setting its own trade priorities. Confidence is the engine that drives this transformation. A country that believes in its capabilities approaches the world differently. It no longer accepts deals that compromise its growth for short-term gain. It no longer allows foreign companies to exploit its markets without creating real value for its people. Confidence changes the tone of negotiations, and it changes the balance of power. When India negotiates trade agreements from a position of strength, it can secure better terms, protect its domestic industries, and open new opportunities for its exporters. Confidence also means refusing to be intimidated by the size and reputation of existing powers. The old mindset of we can't compete with America disappears, replaced with we can offer something better. Self-reliance is the structure that supports this confidence. Without it, bold words are just words. Self-reliance means India having robust manufacturing that can supply not just its own population, but the global market. It means being a leader in emerging industries, such as renewable energy, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and space technology. It means having a financial system resilient enough to withstand external shocks, and a trade network diversified enough that no single country can use economic leverage to force policy changes. A self-reliant India cannot be cornered by sanctions, pressured by threats of investment withdrawal, or manipulated through trade dependencies. This combination of confidence and self-reliance allows India to rewrite the rules of global trade. For decades, those rules have been set primarily by Western economies, with America leading the way. These rules often favor the established powers, protecting their industries, ensuring their currencies dominate, and granting them the upper hand in dispute resolutions. A confident India will not only challenge those rules, but also propose alternatives that are more balanced, more inclusive, and more favorable to emerging economies. This is how influence grows, not by forcing others to follow you, but by creating a system they want to join. When India operates from a position of self-reliance, it attracts partners who are also looking for independence from dominant powers. Many countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America have long sought a fairer, more equitable global trading system. They are tired of being price takers, resource suppliers, and debtors to richer nations. If India can offer partnerships that are mutually beneficial, technology sharing, infrastructure development, fair pricing, and access to new markets, it will naturally become a leader among these nations. This creates a sphere of influence that does not depend on military alliances or political pressure, but on trust and shared growth. Global influence is often misunderstood as something that comes only from wealth or military power. In reality, influence is about being indispensable. If other countries see India as an indispensable trading partner, a source of technology, a market for their goods, and a voice for their interests in global forums, then India's influence expands naturally. America's global control has worked for so long because it positioned itself as indispensable to the world's economy. If India steps into that role for a large portion of the world, the balance of influence shifts dramatically. This is not just about trade numbers or debt rankings. It is about perception. Perception shapes reality in global politics and economics. If the perception is that America's way is the only way, then it remains dominant. If the perception shifts to India offers an alternative that works, then companies, investors, and governments start to act differently. They diversify their investments, change their trade partners, and adjust their diplomatic strategies. This ripple effect weakens America's monopoly on influence and strengthens India's position in the global order. A confident, self-reliant India can also set cultural and intellectual trends that influence the world. Trade is not just about goods and services, it is also about ideas. America has shaped global culture through its entertainment industry, its universities, its corporate culture, and its technological ecosystems. A self-reliant India can do the same by showcasing its own innovations, promoting its creative industries, and exporting its educational and technological expertise. When Indian technology, films, startups, and research become global standards, the soft power that comes with them reinforces economic influence. In the long term, confidence and self-reliance create a cycle of growth and influence. The more self-reliant India becomes, the more confident it grows. The more confident it is, the more it can secure favorable trade agreements, attract investment, and expand its influence. This in turn strengthens its self-reliance by bringing in resources, talent, and opportunities. Such a cycle makes India not just a participant in the global economy, but a rule maker, a nation that can decide how trade is conducted, how resources are allocated, and how disputes are resolved. By reaching this level of independence and authority, India will not need to confront America directly to reduce its influence. The shift will happen naturally as countries start to prefer dealing with a partner that treats them as equals, offers competitive alternatives, and does not rely on control through dependence. This is the essence of rewriting the rules of global trade and influence, creating a system that works for more than just a few who have always held power.